Thank you, Roman. So tell me this. How is your voice working for you? Oh, and everybody gets real serious and wonder, well, that's why I'm here, right? Does it help you? Or does it hurt you? Or maybe you're not so sure. How do you know whether it's doing the job for you? We're going to spend some time today and cover some topics, two major areas. One is how to get your voice to sound the best that it can sound, given that the instrument that you have. And then once we have you sounding like Oprah, then we'll move on to some delivery techniques with the voice that I think will be useful to all of you. So hang on to your hats, we're going to get started. The first thing we're going to look at is those things that make your voice sound better. And I'm going to cover 5 different factors. There's a little card on your seat there. There are 3 of them there, and one of them has 2, and the 4th one is buried in the next little sessions. But this will be sort of an agenda for the meeting today. But before we get started right into those 5 factors for how your voice sounds, we're going to partner up a bit. Right? And this, I guarantee you, is the hardest part of the entire seminar. It's figuring out if you're a 1 or a 2 and who your partner is. Okay, so why do we have a partner? Because the first thing we're going to do is have a little exercise. Now, I mentioned that for how your voice sounds, there are 5 different factors we're going to cover here. And the first one you're going to do as partners. And the first one is breathing. Gosh. We all know how to breathe, right? If we didn't, we wouldn't have been able to walk in here. But there are several different ways of breathing, and we're going to look at 2 of them and see how one works particularly better than the other for how your voice sounds. So how many of you run, exercise, do something like that? All right? And for those who didn't raise their hand, how many of you have ever done anything that raised your heart level? All right? And I won't go into what that was. All right? So if that happens, how do you typically breathe? Let's say you're a jogger or you're a weekend warrior and you're out running and you're kind of getting tired. You typically will breathe how? Kind of like this. Right? Now, that kind of breathing is absolutely the best kind of breathing for an athlete, because it gets CO2 out of your lungs and it gets oxygen into your lungs in the most efficient way possible. And that's really what you're trying to do if you're an athlete. However, most of us, maybe not all, but most of us who are public speakers, that's not an aerobic exercise that gets us to that level, right? So unless you run around a lot, and actually a couple of the table topics last night I think may have gone that far, unless you run around and get really winded, you probably don't need to do what I call the athlete's breath, right? So there's a different kind of breathing. If you're a singer, you've heard this funny phrase called diaphragmatic breathing. And I'm not going to get into what your diaphragm is and how that all works, because every one of you can do this kind of a breath because I know that you've done it. How many of you have yawned before? Yeah, we all know how to do that, right? And so I already have people yawning, and that's good. At this point, that means I'm connecting. So that kind of a yawn breath is very different than the athlete's breath. So athlete's breath that we just did, you think about doing them repeatedly, right? But you can actually do one athlete's breath. And that's the kind of breath that an awful lot of us do by default when we get excited and we're doing our speech and we can hardly wait to get on to the next point. And so we take that kind of quick breath and we never really get a good breath, right? So we're going to call this other kind of breath, which is the beginning of a yawn, we're going to call that the speaker's breath, because that's the breath that will be your friend. So I want each of you, now we don't have to go the yawn all the way to stretching your mouth, kind of. You don't have to do that. But think about what a yawn feels like and looks like when you just begin it. It's kind of, right? So can you do that with me? Just that easy yawn breath? Yeah. See how relaxing and refreshing that is, and how you get oxygen down into your lungs. That's really good. That's the breath that we're going to concentrate on using for the singers. Now, here's where the partner comes in. We're going to do the following. Each partner in turn is going to take an athlete's breath and count out loud to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., right? And then that same person is going to take a speaker's breath and count to 10 again, right? So we'll start with number ones, will be the breathers and speakers. The number twos have a role, and that's to listen to the two different versions and see if the voice sounds any different in the speaker's breath versus the athlete's breath. Okay? When the ones have done their speaking thing, then we swap roles, and the number twos get to breathe and speak, and the number ones listen to see if it's any different. All right, so we'll start out with ones. Everybody who's a one, raise their hand. All right? All right, good. So turn and face your two. All right. Twos, you have a particularly critical role here. You're listening for, does the voice sound any different? So number ones, we're going to do an athlete's breath, just one, kind of, and then count to 10. Here we go. Breathe. 1, 2. Okay, raise your hand when you're done. Okay, now, same number ones, take that speaker's breath, that kind of beginning of a yawn breath, and do the same count. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Okay, number twos, maybe you were listening and heard something different, maybe you didn't, all right? Okay, I'm losing control again. Number twos now are the breathers and speakers, and number ones are listening to their number two partner. So number ones, you're going to do that athlete's breath, that kind of shallow, and count to 10. Here we go. 1. All right, and once you've done that, then you can go and take that deeper speaker's breath and do the same thing. 1, 2. All right, raise your hand when you're done. All right, good. Goodness, this is a tough crowd. That is the exercise, except what I'd like to have is anyone who's bold enough to say, when you were listening, did you hear anything different between the athlete's breath version and the speaker's breath version? Anybody want to volunteer? Yes, sir.
The volume is much better, and
yeah.
The enunciation is more clear.
All right.
The deep breath.
So it's sort of a bigger voice. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyone else?
More resonant.
Had more resonance? You get a gold star. We're going to talk about resonance in a very short minute.
It sounded warmer and kind of friendlier.
Warmer and friendlier? Yeah, yes.
More relaxed.
More relaxed? Very good, very good. These are all really good things. Yes, sir, in the back.
How is it going to change the mode of how the person's going to start talking when you breathe in quick? It almost gives like an anxiety to the breath compared to a slow deep breath with more of a relaxing for the audience.
Yeah, so to some degree, the voice with the athlete's breath almost sounds nervous. And maybe it is nervous, right? Because you're not grounded with that other breath. So that's first factor in terms of getting your voice to sound the best that it can sound is simply take the speaker's breath instead of the athlete's breath. And now we all know how to do that, and we'll all make that the default breath that we always use when we give our speeches, right? Every speech is going to start instead of, right? And that tone is just going to be delightful. Okay, that's factor number one. Factor number two is relaxation, right? Which kind of gets to the point of the gentleman in the back as well. So this time we're going to do the same thing, except we're not going to do it with partners. You're all going to do it together with me. We're going to take that nice speaker's breath that we all know how to do now, and then we're going to tense something. And I don't really care what you tense as long as it's on your own body. All right? And so you'll take that good speaker's breath, you'll tense something, it might be your forearm, it might be your ankle, I don't really care. And then we're going to count together 1 to 5, and I'll actually direct it. 1, 2, 3, all right? So are you ready for that? So we're all ready to take that good speaker's breath, then we'll tense something, then we'll count. So here's the breath, tense something, here's 1, 2, 3, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, let's do that again just so we get the feel of it. So take a good breath. Tense something.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay, all right. Now, let's see if we can not tense the thing you just tensed. And what's the easiest way? He's yawning. I've really connected there. That's actually one of the best ways to make sure that you didn't tense, right? But let's say it was my forearm that I tensed to make my body tense. The easiest way to get rid of tension is to move the thing that got tense, right? So my particular tension spots happen to be in my calves and on the back of my head here. So the easiest way for me not to be tense is just maybe to shift weight or move a little bit here, and that loosens up the tension in my calves. If back here is tense, I may look this way, I may look that way, because it loosens it up. But whatever it was that was just tense for you, this time we're going to take the breath, and we're just going to move it a little bit, and then we're going to count to 5 again. All right, you with me? Here we go. Here's the good breath. Move that tense spot and count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, now we're going to do them back to back. So we'll take the breath, tense something, count, and then take another breath and loosen it by a little motion in 1 to 5. Everybody with me? Here we go. Here's the breath. Tense. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, now we'll take another breath and we'll move that tense thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, so from what you hear in the room, do you hear a difference in the tone that everybody in the room is producing? Yeah, I see a lot of nods, right? There's just something about tension that locks up your voice. And if your voice is locked up, the audience is going to perceive that too. If your voice is nice and loose by taking the good breath, staying loose with your body, the voice is just going to command a better presence than it would otherwise. So that's factor number, what was that, 2, right? So we did breathing, and we've done relaxation. Factor number 3 is posture. And it's funny, everybody sits up. At this point, oh yeah. Your mama told you, you better stand up straight, or you better sit up straight, right? Now she did that because you would look better if you did that. And that's certainly true too. But the curious thing is that it also affects your voice. So we're going to do this. I want each of you to lean your chair backwards as far as you can without it tipping over onto the person behind you. All right, and maybe you can just lean in the chair without it getting off the legs. That's fine too. But I want to kind of be really back and really awful posture, right? All right, so everybody's in that position. Now, take the speaker's breath. Okay, how did that work? It didn't work very well, did it? All right, sit up straight and try that speaker's breath. Was it easier? Yeah. So posture actually has a big influence on your voice because of how it impacts your breathing, and also, by the way, because then your breathing impacts your relaxation, right? So posture is a good thing. If you're standing, stand up straight. We don't have to be military stiff, right? Stand up straight, because this is going to cut off your breathing, right? So we've talked breathing, we've talked relaxation, we've talked posture. Next thing is, and we'll get to your point, is resonance in general, right? Most of what we've been doing so far is to enhance the resonance of your voice. Now, what is resonance? Well, any of you ever play a brass instrument? Yeah, a whole bunch of them. What did you play? Trumpet and euphonium, all right? So I was a cornet player. It's kind of like a trumpet, right? Did you ever take the mouthpiece and just play the mouthpiece? Oh, yeah. What did it sound like? It's hard to do. It sounds like, right? It's not very pretty, right? Now, you put that into the trumpet, though, or the euphonium if it was that one, and all of a sudden it sounds like a trumpet or a euphonium. It sounds really good, right? Why is that? It's because of all that perfectly molded tubing, brass tubing, and the big bell at the end enhances the sound of your vibrating lips into the sound that sounds like the brass instrument. Well, our voice does that too, right? We have these little vocal cords, little tiny membranes down here in our throat, and they sound just like if you put a microphone right above them. But to sound like your voice, the resonance chamber is your throat and your mouth. Right? So the best sound that you will get is to expand the throat and the mouth to the degree you can without being tense. What's the best way to do that? Take the speaker's breath, right? So take that breath and see if you can feel what happens to your throat and to your mouth. Here we go. Right? What happened? It kind of opens up. right? It opens up. It relaxes you as well. I'm getting yawns. That's really good. It opens up and it makes a nice resonating cavity for your voice that makes your voice sound like your voice. So if your voice kind of occasionally gets kind of thin, chances are pretty good that you're choking off in the throat or that your mouth is tight, right? That breath will open it up and it will just make your voice a lot more resonant. Now, there's a couple other things that do impact resonance. One in particular that I want to do, and you're going to do it with me. I want you to take a good speaker's breath, good posture, sitting up. We'll take good speaker's breath and we'll count to 5, the same way we've done already, but we're going to do it with our cheekbones down with a frowny face. Okay, everybody ready? So good posture, good breath, and frown and count to 5. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good. Now I want to do exactly the same thing, but we're going to lift these muscles above your cheeks and make a smiley face. Here we go. Here's the breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Which did you like better? Yeah, bingo, right? A smile really helps the resonance of your voice. Now, do you think this matters if you're talking on the phone? Yeah. They can't see you, but they can hear you, right? So they can tell if you're smiling on the other end of the line. So it almost doesn't matter if you're speaking to an audience or you're just talking on the phone or you're in a meeting. A smile goes a long ways to enhance the resonance and the liveliness and the engaged factor of the sound of your voice. All right, so we've talked about breathing, we've talked about relaxation, we've talked about posture, we've talked about resonance. The last thing, and I have to look at my notes, I've forgotten, is pitch. Oh, and the reason I forgot is that pitch actually is both something that affects your voice, how it sounds, and also how you do delivery. All right? So, has anyone ever suggested to you, or maybe you picked up in conversations, that a low voice is something that's really to be cultivated, that a low voice is better than a not low voice? I see a lot of people nodding their heads, right? There must have been like hundreds of research papers written on why that's the case, right? Not one. And I've been looking for years to find one paper that did a psychological study that said that somebody with a low voice was a better speaker than somebody with a high voice. If any of you were in Mark Skipper's presentation, he mentioned Zig Ziglar. Anybody know Zig Ziglar? Have you ever listened to him? He's got the highest voice I ever heard. Right? Did that keep him from making millions of dollars as a public speaker? No, it never did. Now, I actually went through on YouTube videos looking at presidential elections, seeing which candidate won the election. Was it the high voice guy or the low voice guy? Kind of depends on the decade, but it's a wash. Right? The high voice wins sometimes, the low voice wins sometimes. What is important is that you use the voice that's best for you. Now, his voice is different than her voice is different than her voice, right? Because your biology is different. The size of your vocal cords are different, and the space that you have to make it. So to suggest that a low voice is really important really is off the wall. And you'll find if you Google voice coaches, there are coaches out there who will say, we'll help you make a lower voice. So if I were to give this whole speech in this pitch range instead of the pitch range that I've been using so far, in about 10 minutes I'm going to get tired. Right? Because there's tension here to produce that lower voice, because that's not where my voice is. All right, so how do you figure out what your optimal voice range is? The good news is there's a simple exercise to do that. The bad news is I don't have time to do it. But I will give you a hint, actually 2 hints. One is if you go to my website, it's on the little card there, there's an article called How Low Should You Go that defines all of what we've talked about here and the exercise. But I'll give you a hint for the exercise. If you're an active listener, and you are listening to someone else and you really want them to keep talking, but you don't want to remain completely silent, one of the standard, at least American customs is to go, mm-hmm, right? Anybody ever done mm-hmm? Of course you do, right? Well, what I just did, mm-hmm, bounded the optimum pitch range for my voice. The of right about there is about the lowest that I should probably talk as in my default range, and the right about there is about as high as I should probably talk. Now that doesn't mean I can never talk down there, because I will, but it means that most of the time that I talk, I'm going to talk in that range. Okay, that was fun. Now what are we going to do? Now that you all have Meryl Streep's or Harrison Ford's voice, what do you do with it to make sure that it's effective? There are 7 different vocal delivery factors that I'm going to cover here, and I hope that you can stay with me because they're going to move quickly. One of them, and the most important one, again, is pitch. Now, it was sort of a joke in my intro that Toastmasters just think vocal variety is don't be a monotone. But certainly that is one of the important things, right? If I were to give a speech saying, today's speech will have 3 topics in it, and the topics will be how to break a speech into 3 topics, and how to go from topic number 1 to topic number 2, and then how to go from topic. I mean, it almost doesn't matter if the words are funny because you tune out after about 5 words, right? Because it's all the same. But you all know that. You're all Toastmasters, and nobody wants to be a monotone, so you figure out how to avoid that. But does changing the pitch just for its own sake make any sense? Does it really help? Well, have any of you ever gone, and I hope I don't offend anyone, has anyone ever gone to the mall and heard the following conversation? Well, we just went to the mall, and then we met Brad, and then Brad told us that he likes Judy, and then with that little lift at the end, we all know what that is, right? And it's kind of silly, but that changed pitch. So have we fixed being a monotone? Not at all, right? You've just turned it into a different kind of pattern. So changing pitch for pitch's sake is not what we're trying to do. It's changing pitch for a particular plan. So let's say that we're speaking in that optimum pitch range that we established with the exercise. Why might you want to speak higher than normal? You can get more emotion. For me, one of the easiest ways to describe it is that it adds excitement to what you're doing. Let's say that you're a sales team, or you're a manager of a sales team, and you have a whole bunch of regions all across the country, and you just got the sales numbers for the year and found out you're the best sales team in the whole company, and you want to tell your team that, right? You would come in and it might go something like this. You know, team, we just got our sales numbers for the year, and we are the highest selling team of the whole company, right? See what I did with my voice? I raised the pitch of the voice, and that brought excitement to the message. If instead I had just said, and we are the highest selling team in the company, it just doesn't have the impact. So raising the pitch above that default to add excitement is something that you can do if in your speech you want to add excitement, and it may well be your topic. That's a good thing for you to do. So what might be a case where you might want to lower your pitch a little bit more than normal? For emphasis? Yeah, for impact, right? To kind of make sure that somebody gets that maybe this is more important. Let's say you're that same sales manager and you have a new sales program coming up and you're introducing it. And your sales team is already the #1 team, so they're going to be skeptical about anything that's brand new. But you believe that this plan is really going to work. So you might come in and you say, we're going to introduce a new sales program this month, and I know that this is going to be a big change, but I believe it's really going to work. Right? What I just did was I lowered the pitch of, in effect, the punchline of what I just said, and it kind of added some power, some impact to what I just said. If I just said, and I believe it's really going to work, it's just not the same as saying, and I believe it's really going to work, right? You can tell the impact is there. So you can high for excitement, low for impact, right? Now, the most important thing, however, about varying pitch, I haven't even talked about yet, and that's to clarify meaning. Let's say, I'm going to take a 3-word sentence. I am excited. Right? If I just said, I am excited, that's a declarative sentence and everybody gets that. But if I change the pitch on some of these words, I change the meaning of the sentence altogether. If instead of saying, I am excited, I say, I am excited. That means something a little different, right? It means, I don't know about you, but I am excited. So there's some emphasis there about what it is that I'm trying to say. So what I did was I raised the pitch on I, and I got a little bit stronger meaning of what I was just saying. So is raising the pitch always going to do that? Well, it depends on how you raise the pitch. If I do it this way, I am really excited, or I am excited, right? I raised the pitch on I, but it was sort of this little lilt, right? And it turned it into a question immediately. And all of a sudden, I completely reversed the meaning of the sentence, right? I am excited means, are you crazy? Of course I'm not excited. I hate this, right? So just a different treatment of the pitch made a whole different meaning to the sentence. Same thing with am. I am excited. I don't care what Paul said about me. I am excited. He was just wrong, right? So there's some emphasis there that works. You can do the same, I am excited, and all of a sudden it's back to a question again. So pitch variation can change the entire meaning of the sentence. Let's look at the last word, excited. This is one of my favorites. I call it the Eeyore effect. I am excited. Right? Everybody knows Eeyore and the Winnie the Pooh, right? I'm excited, right? Clearly Eeyore isn't. Eeyore's never excited, right? But by just dropping the pitch on excited, you change the whole meaning of the sentence. And everybody who understands how English language works gets that. So pitch is important, high for excitement, low for impact, but all the way within a sentence to make sure that the words really mean what you want them to mean. Okay, that was fun. Next factor, volume. How loud should you speak? Well, certainly there's a default volume that you use for most of your speeches. It has to be loud enough, excuse me, so that the people in the back row can hear, because if they can't hear, they'll leave. Or if they're in a meeting and they can't leave, they'll start looking at their phone. But if they can't hear you, then it clearly, your speech doesn't make any sense. But it can't be so loud that Anna in the front row starts putting her hands over her ears because I'm blowing her eardrums out, right? So there's a certain default volume level that just needs to be something you're comfortable with. And sometimes that depends on the room, right? If the room is big enough, the reason I'm mic'd here is I want to be loud enough for Tom in the back to hear, but not so loud that I blow Anna away here. So that will particularly help. Now, but would there ever be cases where you might want to vary how loud you talk? Well, sure. What might be a reason to speak louder than normal? When you're teaching, yeah. To get the students' attention, maybe, yeah. There's a certain power in loudness, right? So I've got a little example here. Let's see if I can remember this one. It's also kind of a management thing. This is sort of a rabble-rouser speech to your troops. We have the people, we have the tools, we have the desire, and we're going to do this. Right? Now that's very different than if I said, we have the people, we have the tools, we have the desire, and we're going to do this. Right? It has a whole different meaning. So loudness certainly brings power, and there will be times, perhaps, in some of your speeches, depending on the topic, where that kind of power is really important. Use it judiciously. If you talk that way all the time, then people will just say you're weird and they'll leave. Or they'll never come back and hear you again. Right? So loud can be really important. What might be a reason to speak softer than normal? I'm sorry?
Sad news.
Sad news, perhaps. It might be sad. Yeah. There's another one that I like to use as well. Yes? Yes, confidentiality. That's good. To get someone's attention. Roseanne wins the gold star for this one, all right? So let me do the following sentence. Let's say it's your same sales team, and you've got this new product that you're rolling out, and you know it's a winner. And you might say, you know, we all know that we're really prepared, but we have a secret weapon, right? So you could just see the room got quiet. Did you see? It's like everybody stopped moving and they listened and they got on the front edge of their seats. And there will be times when you want to do that. And actually, soft can be more attention-getting than loud, right? Because people hear loud all the time. But soft can be, it's one of those things that doesn't happen very often. Now, clearly you don't want to do that like every 2 minutes, because then, again, it doesn't make any sense. But if you have a particular point where you really want to suck somebody in. This is going to be important, right? A soft can really do that. And so, but overall, loud, soft, change it up a little bit to make sure that your audience stays with you. All right, diction. How you pronounce your words. Now, what's a decent approach to default? Well, for most of us who are Toastmasters, a conversational style probably works pretty well. The way that you would talk to your friends works pretty well in here. Now, if on the other hand, you're known to kind of slur your words when you're around your friends and they still humor you and that's okay, right? Then maybe you need some attention. But for most of us, I think we know how to do a conversational style in an understandable way. But there will be some cases where you want to exaggerate your diction, right? What might some of those be? Here's one. Just to make sure someone understands a particularly critical point. Let's say you're doing a training exercise to the bomb squad, all right? And let's say you get to the one point in your talk where you're going to say, you're talking about a particular bomb you're disabling, and right here it is extremely important that all 3 switches are enabled simultaneously. Right? See what I did with my diction? Now, if I had just said it's extremely important at this point that all 3 switches are enabled simultaneously, and I kind of went on, with that, you just probably blew somebody up who wasn't paying attention. Right? But instead, if you said all 3 switches simultaneously, that diction, exaggerated diction, is going to be really important to make sure they get exactly what you said. Now, you won't use that for every point along your speech, but for those really important ones that you need to make sure they get everything that you said, that's really good. Okay, so another reason to exaggerate your diction is just the size of the room you're in. Right? If any of you have ever given a speech in a big auditorium that's 40 rows deep, your diction has to be a little more clear than it would be in a smaller room, right? That my diction in this room is going to be a little more clear than if I was just carrying on a conversation with the front row. And the reason is just to make sure that the people in back hear all the consonants that actually make the words understandable. So a big room. Now, if you're mic'd, does that go away? Actually not. What I've found over the years is that amplified sound, because most sound systems clip a little bit at the high end, and the high end frequencies are where all the consonants are, and that's what make the words understandable. So even if you're mic'd, it's probably a good thing to exaggerate your diction a little bit for a big room. Okay. The other one refers back to the past point where we're talking about soft. This is a discovery I made myself. I won't claim to be the first person who ever did, but I haven't read anything about it. The softer you speak, the more clear your diction has to be. If I'm talking loud, I can be just as sloppy as I want with my diction, and you're going to get every word. But if I'm talking soft, it has to be a lot clearer. So if you go soft, go crisp as well, and I think that will help with your diction. Okay, next factor, delivery speed. How fast should I talk? This is a tough one. You need to talk fast enough and slow enough to be you. Right? And each of us has our own speed. You're getting a sense of what mine is. Some people just speak a little more slowly, and that's who they are, and that's fine, right? So whatever it is that you're comfortable with, as long as you don't see people either feeling assaulted or falling asleep, the delivery speed is probably pretty good. But again, are there instances where you might want to speed up? Yeah. Let's go back to the reasons you might want to use a higher voice, because it can tend to be a little bit similar. Let's say that you've found out that your big budget proposal to the board of directors got approved, and you're coming down and, Joe, can you believe it? Our budget is approved. Oh my God, we're going to do this, right? So my delivery speed got a lot faster, right? Now, you can do as much of that as you think is appropriate to the degree of excitement that you want to bring. But a little bit more rapid fire delivery will bring excitement to your message as well. Can you imagine why you might want to talk more slowly than normal? This was a little harder one, but I think it may get to Joe's point about tough news. If you were to come in, let's say that you worked for a company for 15 years and most of your friends had too, and you just found out that they're closing the doors. All right? Chances are you wouldn't come into your to your team and say, "Well, we're closing the doors." Right? You probably would come in and say, "Well, we're closing the doors." Right? So you slow the delivery down. It shows a little bit of sensitivity that you wouldn't get otherwise. Yes, sir.
Does slowing the delivery down have a similar effect to lowering the volume?
It could. Yeah, there could be some trade-offs here. Now,
Listen more carefully.
you do? Yeah. To some degree, just changing alerts you to something's different, right? And so changing the pitch will do that. Changing the speed will do that. So any of those changes will get some attention, to what you're doing. All right. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to ask, was also another reason for changing the speed have to do with people who have English as a second language?
Yes, actually, a very good point. The speed at which you deliver may depend on the degree of facility with the English language that your audience has. If I'm presenting to our Singapore affiliate, that I probably have to be a little slower and clearer diction-wise than I would if I'm speaking to the group that just is kind of at our speed. Yeah, good point. Good point. All right, so that's delivery speed. Now, the ultimate in variation of delivery speed is pauses. Yeah, pauses. It's almost a separate thing all itself, though. Pauses can be incredibly effective if you know exactly how to use them and when to use them. Now, clearly, you wouldn't use a pause all the time. Right? That's just kind of silly. So have a plan for your pauses. Now, there's a couple ways to use pauses that I'll introduce for you here. One is, let's say that you're making a presentation and there's this one point that really is important, but it also may be a bit complex for you to understand. And there's a fellow that I work with who's a retired economist, and he's giving some speeches now about the intelligence revolution, which is the impact of automation and technology on people's jobs and on the economy in general. He has a statement in his speech that goes something like this, if I remember it right. According to a recent McKinsey study, over half of what human beings get paid to do today can be automated with today's technology. Now, see how the impact of that point is something you want your audience to digest. Now, in his case, which is very good, he'll come back and repeat it. Half with today's technology. But the pause allows your audience to digest what was a pretty big, high-impact point for them to kind of get through. So a pause can really allow your audience to process what you've been talking about. And again, you're not going to use it all the time, but there may be some points where you really want to do that. Now, you can also use pauses to set up a punchline, both in a humorous context or not. Let's say that I have a joke, and I don't particularly have one, but let's say that it is about somebody who did something funny at my last meeting, and I'm going to lead right up and describe everything that happened, and everybody's on the pins and needles, and you know who it was? Anna. Right? And nobody knows why that was funny, but they'll say, okay, so I get it. And it set up the punchline in a way that wouldn't have been as strong otherwise. The same thing if you do awards presentations. The winner of the Table Topics District Contest is name. It just has a different impact than saying the winner of the Table Topics District Contest is, and you say his name. So pauses can set up a point really well as well. Okay, so we're down to the funny exercise. I'm hoping I have time for this. There's a statement that, it's another paper I have on my website called Beauty is in the Vowels, Passion is in the Consonants. Right? Beauty, we all know what vowels and consonants are, right? So if I were to say, what a beautiful sunset that is, you're at the beach, I would probably not say, what a beautiful sunset that is, right? I would say, what a beautiful sunset that is. So I softened out my consonants, and I went to all vowels, and it really got the beauty, all right? But passion is in the consonants. How many of you know the give me liberty or give me death piece of the end of the Patrick Henry speech? Okay, so we're going to do that as a group, and we're going to do it this way. The key is there are 4 words: give, liberty, give, death, right? That are really important. And to make this high impact, we're going to do strong, hard consonants and long, not hard consonants. So we're going to start by saying give. So just say give. Give. Now say give. Give. Right? With that hard G. It's a lot stronger, right? So if we can say give, now we've got 2 of the 4 words because give happens twice in this, right? What if we did liberty that way? Liberty. That's kind of weird, right? So there are these things called singable consonants that you could sing happy birthday on, and L is one of them. Right? For the singable consonants, instead of making them stronger, you'll make them longer. See what I just did with the L? You make them longer. So in the give me liberty or give me death, it's going to be give me liberty with a long L. Do that with me. Give me liberty. All right, that's good. And the next give we've got, so let's get to the last one, which is death. Another hard consonant, right? So give me death. Death. Again, death. Again, death. Again, death. I love this part. By now, of course, the security people have called 911, and they'll be here in a minute, right? So let's put the whole thing together. Give me liberty, give me death, right? Again, give me liberty or give me death, right? See how much stronger that is, how much more passionate that is, and it doesn't actually have to be loud to do that, right? So passionate in the consonants, beauty is in the vowels. Last factor is a really simple one. It's energy, right? Audiences are perfect mirrors. If you give them energy, they'll give it back to you. If you don't, they won't. Right? How many of you have actually heard a speech where it was kind of low energy and you either went to sleep or you started looking in your program to see who was next, right? But on the other hand, somebody with a fair amount of energy, you're going to stay with them the whole way. So that's really important. Give them energy and they'll be back. Those are the 7 factors. Last thing is, how do you know whether you're doing them or not? How many of you have one of these? Not an iPhone SE, but a smartphone, right? You all do, probably. Everyone who has a smartphone, that phone has a recording app on it, right? So you do practice your speeches, right? So get your phone out, hit the record button, give your speech, hit the stop button, go back and listen, and be your own best coach, right? If something isn't clicking the way you'd like it to, go back through some of these factors, or go back through the factors of how your voice sounds. Experiment with some of those and see how they'll do for you. But then go back, record again, listen again, be your own best coach. If there are some other kind of finer things that you want to do, there are lots of coaches around that will help you, but being your own best coach with that phone is usually your best approach. So that's what I have. I hope this has been helpful. What I would do is task each of you. You have your little crib sheet that was on your seat there. Go home and try some of these. Try them in your next speech. Maybe just try one. You don't want to try all 7 factors, but let's say next time I've got that one spot in my speech that I'm really going to get passionate, and I'm going to deliver it that way and see how it works. And your audience will tell you how it works. But I suspect that when you're done, you're going to discover that you love your new voice. Thank you.